I played Star Control Origins when it first came out in 2018, but the whole controversy with the original creators of the Star Control games taking exception to Stardock's acquisition of the license, it really spoiled the enjoyment of the game for me. I stopped playing and I haven't returned until now. I don't want to get into the legal weeds in this review, suffice to say there was a dispute about who owned the rights. Now, however, the original creators are working on their own indie-funded update to the original, the Urquan Masters 2, and with the legal wrangling out of the way, I wanted to give Star Control Origins a good go in 2022. Is it a worthy successor to classic Star Control 1 and 2, and the divisive third entry in the series? Yes and no, I would say. Graphically, the game is an obvious improvement. Everything is 3D now, the aliens are beautifully rendered, and the ships and their weapons, they really look lovely. There was a lot of suggestion with the original 16-bit game's look. I was never 100% clear what a Chenjesu brood home actually looked like, and the Shifixti Scout was like a 10-pixel triangle. Stardock's game is much more high resolution, as you would expect, and what is going on with each race's design aesthetic is much clearer, more thought put into it. You get the feeling that the original creators were just smoking too much pot sometimes. There's a direct correlation between the Muke squid-like race, for instance, and their ships, the way they look. They look like squids, predictably. While it's not true of all races, just like the original game, there's more coherence in terms of the background and design of each race. The story and motivation of each race is interesting, if not particularly original, and the enjoyment of discovering the various races of the universe in the story mode, finding out their history, what motivates them, is the driving force behind exploration in Star Control Origins. I still remember playing a very similar game, Starflight, on the Mega Drive, and the excitement of stumbling upon a new species that you first can barely understand, but then gradually they become either allies or enemies over time. Weirdly, this sense of discovery was only ever a factor in Star Control with the third game for me, since the majority of races in Star Control 2 were already familiar. The need for Stardock to shift the game into an alternate universe for legal reasons has had the happy side effect of really punching up that sense of discovery, since every race in this game is, well, pretty much every race is new. To break it down, there are basically three parts to the gameplay. Exploration, as you set out with your mothership and your fleet, fulfill quests, unravel the story of the various races and that part of the galaxy. There's planetary resource gathering, that's done with landers that you manually steer across the surface of planets, and the meat of the game, which is the space battles, always for Star Control. Of these three elements, I will touch on the weakest first, the resource gathering. It's really not much fun and gets old pretty quick. It's admirable that Stardock have tried to gamify this pretty dry aspect of empire building games, but the landers are just not that fun to control. There's no challenge. There are critters and drones to shoot, but they're so easy to avoid or kill, they might as well not be there. And for me, the planets were where the game crashed most often, I'm afraid to say. I'll return to Origin's technical issues later, but I'm not the only one. Judging by reviews and complaints online, this game has technical problems, even though it really shouldn't have. For any, I would say even low-end PC, modern PC should be able to run this game, but it's got a lot of issues. But as I say, I'll come back to that. The space battles, that's what we all want from a Star Control game, and Stardock has done a good job of recreating that sense of conflict from the first games. The way it plays is exactly the same. The inertia of the ships is fun to control. It's harking back to very early arcade games like Asteroids. That's the kind of kernel of fun from playing a Star Control game, is controlling the ships and the sense of inertia, the different speeds of the different ones. But they've made some interesting decisions. For instance, the arena of space in which you fight no longer wraps around. It's hemmed in by a ring of asteroids or some other space anomaly like corrosive nebula or something. It makes the battles less exploity and keeps the ships closer together. There's fewer of those situations where a fast ship can give a slower ship the run around forever because it's wrapping around the screen. It was an exploit. There are also many more environmental elements within the map to think about. I've mentioned the asteroids, but there are wormholes that port you across the screen. There are power-ups that give you an edge, not too powerful in order that you're going to win the battle if you grab them, but enough to give you something else to think about. And of course the planets with their gravity wells, some stronger than others, and they can be a hindrance or a help depending on how you use them. It's the Star Control combat that I wanted, and they've pretty much nailed it, I think. It's just a shame that the AI in Origins is so easy to outsmart. I had to crank the difficulty up all the way to the maximum to experience any kind of challenge at all, and I'm not that good of a player. I'd say I'm spectacularly average, although I did tend to be able to beat everyone at the local youth club when I was 15, something that I am still stupidly proud of at the age of 45. That was a time when the pool of players was much more shallow. You know, you're not competing against everyone on the internet. I think I was playing against people who were particularly rubbish. Actually, now I'm very average at this type of game and most others. So it's not me, it's the AI. 99% of the time I was able to beat it without breaking a sweat on the hardest difficulty. I'm sure Stardock could create AI that never missed a shot and could kill you in seconds, but they haven't done that, and it wouldn't be fun. That's why they haven't done that. What we've got instead is an AI that doesn't know how to bide its time, avoid obstacles reliably, let alone use them to its advantage, or set traps for the player. It's so bad sometimes that if you're in a hopelessly outmatched ship, you can just wait it out until the AI smashes into enough asteroids to kill itself through bad piloting. I found I could barrel through Drenkend space, killing everything they threw at me with one Muke grabber. The Drenkend, like many other races, have different types of ships with different weapons, different speed, different capabilities, but if they're all piloted by AI that is dumb as a brick, it doesn't matter. It's for this reason the rock, paper, scissors aspect of the game is somewhat diluted. There are certain ships like the grabber that are obviously such good all-rounders you really don't need much else. I don't know, maybe it's been so long since I played the original that I'm inflating this aspect of the game in my mind. I am planning to return to the originals to see if this is the case, but I remember knowing the ships and knowing what beats what being a big part of the game. There were always certain ships that were good all-rounders, like the Yahet and the Urquan Dreadnought, but you could beat them if you knew what to choose as a counter. In Origins, it doesn't really matter. You find a couple of favourites that are good, whatever the case, and you're pretty much set. I would love to have completed the game to be able to tell you whether or not this disappointing difficulty persists into the end game. I feel like I got far enough and I played long enough to get a solid idea, but I must now unfortunately move on to the one thing that has marred my enjoyment of Stardock's Origins the most, and that's the crashes to desktop. I have tried everything on the troubleshooting wiki, submitted bug reports, altered graphics settings. Nothing works. It's a shame. This sort of thing is so user specific. There are some people for whom the game has never crashed, but there are those for whom it crashes so regularly you give up, and that's me. I put up with it for as long as I could, but in the end it just leaves you feeling demotivated when another battle or resource gathering session doesn't count because the game crashes to desktop. It happened mostly when there were a lot of effects going on, and I think it's something to do with Nvidia graphic drivers. It has been a known issue since 2018, and it's obviously still an issue now. What can you say about a game that you can see has many appealing aspects but doesn't work properly for you? Games have to run on a plethora of PCs, and that's tough, I do understand, especially for small teams, but if you don't pull that trick off, well, you're going to get into situations like this where someone wants to like your game and play it through to completion, but they can't for technical reasons. It is such a huge shame. Other positive aspects to mention are the sound design and weapon effects. I love certain ships like the Mark II Terran Cruiser, for instance. Even though it's not the best, due to its twin missiles, they sound so cool. So satisfying to watch them track across space towards the target. The music also is stellar, but a bit hard to describe. Spacey synthwave maybe, but I dig it, and it's a game soundtrack I listen to outside the game. Great for relaxation, especially the hyperspace travel tracks. The voice acting, however, not so much, and there's a lot of repeated dialogue, so I did find myself eventually turning off the voices. See what you think, but I found the game particularly unfunny, even though it's trying so hard to be funny. I can't remember the last game I played where, yeah, I can see this game is meant to be funny, right? There's a running gag about the Menkmak selling the Drenken fake ears, so they'll shoot anyone with more or less than 3 ears. I know this is meant to be funny. Intellectually, I can see the comedy. Just doesn't make me laugh. Humour is so subjective though. I don't want to ding the game too much for this. Maybe for some people it's side splitting. I can see the creators obviously think it is. I'm glad they do, but if we went for a drink, I don't think it would be long before we were sitting in absolute silence. On balance, Star Control Origins is a strong attempt to update a classic. It has great production values and a solid game loop that keeps you wanting to explore and upgrade your ship and fleet, but it is marred by persistent technical issues, a brain-dead AI unfortunately, and a tone that may or may not click with everyone. Thank you for listening to this review. I've been Napyet. If you get time, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.